everyone right across the assembly point.
As a caretaker.
Sorry, Chair, there's just a problem.
Is this better?
No, there's no sound. There's no sound. There's no sound.
I can hear you. I can hear me there. Are we done? Are you okay? Is there sound now? Is the sound from here or from here?
From here.
Both mics, so I must keep both. Let's start again. I was saying you have to trust me when I say tonight's briefing is not one I'd wished for. As I near the end of my tenure as the caretaker, I would have wished to be talking to you and South Africans at home under very different circumstances. The decision to implement load shedding is one that we circumstances. The decision to implement load shedding is one that we did not take lightly. And in effect, our objective is to avoid load shedding, and if absolutely necessary to do so, did not take lightly. And in effect, our objective is to avoid load shedding, and if absolutely necessary to do so at as a minimal level as is possible. That said, I want to take this time to unreservedly apologize to South Africans for the negative impact at as a minimal level as is possible. That said, I want to take this time to unreservedly apologize to South Africans for the negative impact that our decision to implement load shedding has had on them. I also sincerely apologize for the minimal warning we gave you about the challenging situation we found ourselves in this week. Trust me, we are as disappointed as you are when we find ourselves with no choice. I also sincerely apologize for the minimal warning we gave you about the challenging situation we found ourselves in this week. Trust me, we are as disappointed as you are when we find ourselves to load shed, irrespective of our efforts to avoid doing so. If you could indulge me, allow me to contextualize the situation. Ourselves with no choice but to load shed, irrespective of our efforts to avoid doing so. If you could indulge me, allow me to contextualize the situation. As you may recall, Eskom started implementing load shedding late last year, where we put together the generation recovering program, our so-called 9-point plan. This plan, in conjunction with the winter plan, enabled us to go through the winter period without implementing load shedding. In the beginning of September, we shared our summer plan, where we stated that we do not foresee the need to load shed over the summer period, provided that we can contain our unplanned outages below 9,500 megawatts. We're further warned that in the event that the generator breakdowns we are experiencing are beyond 10,500, this will mean excessive utilization of our water and emergency diesel reserves, which could lead to load shedding if sustained for a longer duration. We also advised that the summer period is different to winter in that the profile of demand is such that it peaks in the morning and remains relatively flat during the course of the day and peaks. Summer remains a challenging period with its own other peculiarities, one of them being that we experience vacuum load losses occasioned by the ambient air temperature and wind direction that have a negative impact on the efficiency of some of our coal-fired plants, such as Matimba. We've started to see that in Majuba, and yesterday we experienced a similar pattern in Tutuga. Eskom also prioritizes maintenance of critical plant components over this period. These are all the issues we raised that could pose risks to the system and threaten the security of supply. Unfortunately, this is what has now materialized in the last few days. Against high levels of consumption, we experienced high levels of unplanned breakdowns that exceeded the 10,500 megawatts limit and resulted in the excessive utilization of our water and diesel emergency reserves. In particular, at the weekend, 6 power station units were shut down due to boiler tube leaks, contributing to unplanned outages increasing to above 12,000 megawatts, putting the electricity system under severe pressure. The situation was exacerbated by the failure of the conveyor belt supplying Medupi Power Station with coal that failed on Saturday on the 12th of October, resulting in low volume of coal being supplied to the power station, thus limiting the generating capability and resulting in the station incurring over 1,200 megawatts of load losses. And in an effort to meet demand while in parallel, we put in place urgent measures to increase capacity from coal-fired generation, the pump storage and open cycle gas turbines. We have used those extensively since Saturday, the 12th of October. This in turn subsequently led to a decline in the diesel tank levels and the dam levels at the Palmit pump storage and Ingula pump storage schemes. While some units returned to service on Monday, we had other units that tripped and found ourselves with severely constrained power systems without emergency reserves that we needed to carry us through. And by the time we were planning for Tuesday morning peak, it became clear that we were not going to make it without compromising the system. Thus, the decision to implement load shedding was made as our last resort. I would like to emphasize that the decision to load shed at stage 2 is one that we did not take lightly either, but one we needed to take in order to balance supply and demand and protect the system from total collapse. It was also our view that we had carried on it was also our view that we had carried on using our emergency reserves. We would only be, had we carried on using our emergency reserves, we would have been postponing the inevitable and found ourselves worse off, potentially having to load shed at levels that may well have paralyzed the economy more so than if we had started earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand the inconvenience that comes with load shedding, its impact on the economy and society at large, and I want to assure all our customers and South Africans at large that our objective is not to implement load shedding. If we have to, as a measure of last resort, in order to protect the integrity of the system, we aim to do so at minimal levels in the shortest duration possible to recover as quickly as possible. We aim to also provide as much predictability as is possible to allow you, our customers, to plan your lives accordingly. If we have not explained this properly before, today I would like to try again to make sure that South Africans understand our objective. I also want to make sure that we all understand that we do try our best, but protocols and regulations provide that at a certain point the system operator has a duty to protect the system, and it becomes his prerogative to make the call to load shed. The decision to load shed, including the stage and duration, is based on a prognosis that takes into account the state of the system and generation capacity at that point in time. The system is dynamic, with partial losses that can be fixed quickly to unplanned losses that can take longer time. This means that at any given point, our reserves continue to change, which makes it challenging to provide the perfect case of predictability. I hope that this has given enough context about where we are and how we got here. What is it that we are going to do or have been doing? We have activated our emergency command center, and the system recovery is in progress. Contingency measures were put in place to mutually feed coal to manually feed coal to Medupi, whilst we endeavor to fix the conveyor belt. We have made considerable progress in that we now expect this to be done by the middle of next week. In the intervening period, we have had to optimize delivery of coal to the station. We have also started receiving additional diesel supplies from major oil companies providers. As such, we are comfortable that we can build the necessary diesel and water reserves to acceptable levels by the weekend. I must point out that the amount of diesel we need to sustain supply in the interim is not a quantum that can be delivered in a short space of time. On this note, I must express gratitude to the fuel oil companies who have come on board to assist us with our diesel requirement in this period. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with the recovery of the electricity system, it should be noted that this exercise is not straight and upward trajectory. There will be some dips and slips. However, we remain resolute in our efforts to improve and ensure reliability of power supply. This recovery must also be taken in context. While we have an overall capacity of approximately 47,000 megawatts, when we take into account both planned and unplanned outages, Eskom effectively has about 32,000 of megawatts available capacity, of which demand of about 30,000, including operating their reserves. This does not give us enough room to perform maintenance. We are working with a system that is as old and unreliable. Therefore, the risk of further breakdown is always imminent. This also means we at times may delay planned maintenance. In the long term, this adds up to our problems of capacity constraints, as we do not get the time and space to fix these machines. The reality is that a long-term sustainable solution is only through expedited maintenance and/or additional capacity, which both require funds to be expended. We all know our other conundrum, which is we are experiencing extreme financial constraints that makes this difficult, if not impossible. We need to balance optimization of CapEx and other costs against the need to do maintenance in order to ensure security of supply. All this means our recovery efforts are short-term focused at this stage. I believe that the anticipated integrated resource plan will provide for longer-term solutions to the country's energy needs through an energy mix that incorporates other sources of generation to boost capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, for now, mine is to assure you and our commitments to powering this country. The system remains constrained and vulnerable. However, some generation units have already returned to service, and we are expecting more units to return to service over the next few days, which lessens the probability of load shedding towards the weekend. Based on what we know as at 5 p.m. this evening, here is our prognosis. We will implement stage 1 load shedding tomorrow from 9 a.m. until 23 p.m. Thereafter, we anticipate no further load shedding. This will allow our pumped storage dam levels to be recovered over the weekend. This plan required some diesel generation of about 1,000 megawatts to be used for short durations over the morning and evening peaks. We will keep you South Africans informed about the status and our recovery efforts throughout this period. Once again, on behalf of Eskom, I sincerely apologize to our customers and South Africans, particularly to our matriculants and the business for the inconvenience. Before I take questions, I want to wholeheartedly thank Eskom team for all their hard work over the last few days. You have really pulled together as a team, and that shows in some of the quick wins that we've been able to achieve. I do thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mabuza. Maybe before we take questions, let me just introduce you to our panel. Next to Mr. Mabuza is our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Jan Oberholzer. Next to him is Sekgomotso Skeepers, our Group Executive for Transmission. And next to him, Begi Nxumalo, the Group Executive for Generation. And lastly, Bernard Makoro, our System Operator. Please, when you, just before you pose your question, just introduce yourself. We'll take 3 at a time.
It's Charlotte Matthews from Mining MX. These boiler tube leaks, do you not have an external company which is supposed to be doing the boiler maintenance for you? And the second question is, you mentioned 6 boiler tube leaks, but I thought you mentioned 5 previously.
Antoinette Slavert from Rapport. Mr. Mabuza, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly, that you said Eskom has 47,000 megawatts of capacity. Effectively, you have 32,000 with a demand of 30,000, and that, are you saying the 32,000 does not give you enough space for maintenance? Because that means 17 or 15,000 is available for planned and unplanned maintenance. It sounds questionable if you say with 32,000 available, it's not enough. Maybe you can clarify that. And then just one other question. The pump storage, how long does it take to replenish or to pump the water up the mountain again, please?
Hi, Bonga Dlulane from EWN. Chairperson, I just want to understand now, when you say after tomorrow, load staging, stage 1 will be implemented, then you don't foresee any load shedding after that. Is that for foreseeable future? Because you said this before, and here we are. Number 2, the Deputy President in the House today said that for South Africa's economy to grow, electricity prices have to go down. Is that something that you think is possible, considering the fact that Eskom turns to tariff hikes when you need to get out of these financial constraints you just mentioned? Thank you.
Samkelo Masego from ENCA. Mr. Mabuza, just to ask you a simple and direct question. Was the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, informed that there would be load shedding? That's a yes or no answer. And secondly, for how long can South Africans take your excuses on why there's load shedding? In a response you gave to Natasha Mazzoni of the DA, you gave an undertaking that there would be no load shedding during the summer period. What went wrong? And are you the suitable person to chair this board and steer the ship of Eskom into the right direction? When will you finally get it right? Because seemingly you are not. And then lastly, on the issue of maintenance, Eskom has continuously during load shedding periods raised the issue of maintenance. Are you simply failing in your posture and plans to maintain these power stations? Thank you.
Peggy or Jan, you want to take the external company doing boiler tubes, leaks, and why are they 6, not 5?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of our boiler maintenance system, we are using mainly our original manufacturers of this boiler to maintain them as well on our system. So all of them are maintained by the original manufacturers. That in terms of the tube leak, the 5 versus the 6, they are in total, there were 6. It's just that 2 of them happened at one station as well, which was at Majuba. That's the difference of them, that one station had 2, and then the rest happened at the rest of the other 5 stations. Thank you, Chair.
Bernard, you want to talk about the installed base of 47 versus the 32,000 and the 30,000 demand and the resultant 2,000 reserves?
Okay. The installed base of 47, if we start there, the demand is 30,000. Then you've left with 17,000. If you are where we were over the weekend, you've got 12,000 out, and then you're left with 5,000. So that's the space that we have for maintenance. The challenge becomes when the breakdown goes above the 12,000. The maintenance, the plant on maintenance, you can't bring it back immediately. So that is why when we end up where we were, the only opportunity that we have, or not opportunity, the only avenue that we have to maintain grid stability is to load shed.
Whilst at it, why don't you deal with the amount of time to pump up water, to fill the dam levels?
Yes, we have 3 pump storage schemes. That is Drakensberg, Ingula, and Palmit. I'll use Drakensberg as an example. At full dam capacity, we have 102 generating hours. We have 4 units. Those 4 units, if we're running all 4, that means you divide 102 by 4. So you can only run for roughly 25 hours. So what we normally do, we'll start Monday morning with full dam capacity with 102 hours. And then we'll run for the morning peak on Monday, evening peak. And normally you do not pump back what you use overnight because the demand only drops around about 9, 10 p.m. So you only have 4 or 5 hours to pump back the water, so you don't get back to full capacity. So you might wake up at 94 unit hours. So the same thing happens the next day. We only get back to full dam levels over the weekend. But if we end up in a situation where we were this past weekend going into Monday, you end up running those pump storage throughout the day, up to 14 hours. So out of the 25 hours, you're now left with 11 hours. So that's why you cannot sustain this for more than 3 days.
Thank you. Bonga. We can never ever say there would be no load shedding. We have never said that. We can never say that. We go out of our way to make the point that whilst no load shedding can be guaranteed, our efforts is always to ensure that it is eliminated, and if it has to be done, it has to be done at the shallowest of levels, and for the shortest possible time, and to come out of it as quickly as possible. There is no way I could have given that guarantee that there would be no load shedding. In my letter, which I read again this afternoon as a response to Honorable Mazoni, I have not said there would be no load shedding in September and October. I never said that. What I did say was that as at the time, 3 weeks ago, she said she got it on reliable information that there would be load shedding. Said we have issued no such communication. We had not communicated that. I was very clear in my mind that communication has never come out of Eskom. This load shedding that has occasioned now, I certainly would not have planned to snap a conveyor belt, which is what pushed us over the 10,500 megawatts. We've always stated that 9,500 is where we are working, we are at. Our ambition is to push towards 8,500 megawatts of unplanned outages. With that space, we will be able to accommodate anything that happens. Once we have 1,200 from a 9,500, it pushes, we did mention 10,500 people that were at the state system update event would remember that. We said if we reach the 10,500 megawatts, we are in the danger zone. The 1,200 megawatts that we lost with the snapping of that conveyor belt on Saturday, that one event, not dissimilar to the Kabora Passa transmission line that fell, that took 1,000 megawatts, took 1,200 megawatts and pushed us to 10,000, to 10,700 megawatts in one day. But it was a weekend, there was no such demand, and we needed to get time to analyze and investigate how deep that problem is. By Monday evening, it became clear that we are having serious problems. But we still had comfort that our reserves from the OCGTs and our pump storage would see us through. The longer then we had other units that tripped. With the combination of those units that tripped, it really pushed us on the other side. And at this point, the tanks on diesel were dropping fast. And at one stage, we looked at, I think it was Ankerlech, and we said there's 40%. We said, no, we've got 40%, we can take some more hours of this, until someone said, if it's 40%, chances are that 20% of that is just sludge. So we had to then bring in diesel, then also use diesel, electricity to pump water up hills so that we can fill up the dams. I will respond to Honorable Mazoni. She has written me another letter. I will respond. Samgelo, no. 2, I have already responded to. You asked me yes or no. The answer is no. I have addressed the issue of Honorable Mazoni. 3, am I the right person? I would have applied for the job if I had the qualification and I wanted it. I didn't apply for this. South Africans and the president and the minister must make the call. Maintenance, or we keep on blaming maintenance. The reality, Samgelo, is, as we have repeatedly said, the average age of Eskom fossil power stations is 37 years. In its nature, that needs maintenance. We have not maintained these plants over time. We have taken a decision that we should not spend time in refurbishing them and money in refurbishing them, because we have taken a decision to build 2 new power stations plus Ngula. We took those decisions as Eskom. The consequence is those 2 power stations that we've built have not yet fully come on stream. They have not come on budget. And the reality is our old power stations are the ones that we have to continuously now fix and keep them going. So in their nature, they will continue to fall over. For these plants, for one to maintain them, they need to be taken off. They work when they're hot. They have to cool off so that you can work on them, fire them, test them, see the faults, take them off. That is if you have planned that. So our 9-point plan, recovery plan, is based on those outages that we can plan to do. Our problem is continuously unplanned outages. That is why we said we will never have a point where we will have unplanned outages. We set ourselves a target that we want to reduce our unplanned outages to stay within the 9,500 megawatts and less. But we've also cautioned that we have just so much tolerance to go to 10,500. Anything above that is going to push us into a red zone. So these are old. They would need to be maintained. So they will have to continuously be maintained. And to maintain them, you need to have time with the machines. Jan, do you want to say some more on the maintenance?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The question was, are we doing maintenance? Yes, we are. We have a schedule for planned maintenance for the year. And as we stand now, we're ahead of what we've planned. And we believe by the end of the year, we will be ahead of what we planned. So we are definitely spending time. And as the chairman, as the chief has said, as and when we have the opportunity, we do take these units out, but we don't have the luxury because it has to run all the time to be able to supply on the demand of the country. So, but whenever we have the opportunity, we do take these plants out and we do maintain them.
Thank you, Tickets. It's Konati Manchanja with Daily Maverick. At the beginning, Mr. Mabuza, please read that line again for me when you spoke about risks that you mentioned in summer. Did you say the direction of the wind is also a risk to the power stations performing ultimately? One. Well, if that is yes, were the power stations built to face the wrong way? Two, why are we holding this media briefing at the airport? Are you buying the airport's company, for example? And so the boiler tube leaks that are being maintained by the very same people who manufactured them, is there no way to detect that there would be leaks? Certainly if Matsoni's sources can detect that there will be load shedding 3 weeks before, why can't Eskom do the same? And so we've got installed capacity of 47,000 and we are having 32,000 megawatts available and 9,500 out of service. What happened to the other 6,000? When will these units that are out of action be returned to service? Thank you. And does, lack of money and or coal, money for parts, did it play any role in the circumstances in which we are? Lastly, are you fetching the chief executive wherever you're going, if that's why we are here?
Sure. Hi, Loni from Bloomberg. I just want to know about the diesel costs. Have you guys managed to push down diesel costs, seeing that we're going to use quite a bit more of it at the moment? Yes, and when can we expect to hear the name of the CEO? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sibongile from Fin24. On the issue of servicing the leaks, there was talk of Eskom going on tender for a new service provider. I just want to find out how far has that process gone?
Good evening. Mr. Mabuza, I'm William Horn from Netwerk 24. I have two questions. The first is regarding the leaks, the boiler tube leaks again. My question is regarding what you said, that you're working or focusing mostly now on the short-term measures you can take. If you could have better finances, if your state of finances were better, would that significantly impact the short-term capacity of Eskom to service these leaks or prevent them from happening? Or is that something that is also a longer-term issue? And then secondly, there seems to be a video, and we've received some tip-offs about a problem at Kusile. Can you confirm if there's anything happening with Silo 1 there? It seems to have been overloaded, or this is maybe an old video. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy, will you explain the issue of vacuum on, firstly, the actual temperature and the direction of wind?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly. I think the main power station that is prone to vacuum failure is Matimba Power Station, which is in Limpopo. If you recall, Matimba is our first plant that was built with a dry cool system with using the radiators, and the design of that plant at the time was that those radiators are too closer to the plant itself. So what happens if the wind direction comes at us from different angles at a high speed as well, the fence then does not get that opportunity to pick up the wind as well if it's coming at the back of the stations at high speed. Combine that with the high temperatures, because in Lipalale, for example, temperatures can go as above 42 degrees. So then in those circumstances, and the wind becomes unfavorable, which means then the fans cannot pick it up to cool, to create the cooling for the turbines. So that's the time that Matimba then will start. We actually, through the years, designed that the plant can automatically start deloading to come to the areas where vacuum can still be maintained without tripping out the turbines. So Majuba is also the second plant with that phenomenon as well, because they were early designed, so Majuba, the problems becomes easier, but it still experience the same thing as Matimba. What you will see then now with the new stations, the designs were then improved, that these radiators are a bit far away from the plant, so that they create a space as well for the air, even if it comes from the wrong direction. So that's why you will pick up that, for example, Metupi and Kusile, because of the improvement of this design, then you're not going to have, we're not having the same problems of vacuum. But Matimba is prone that sometimes on a very bad day with a combination of the wrong direction plus high temperature, you will get us up to 1,500 megawatts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Why we're meeting at the airport happens to be the time I've landed coming from East London. I was on the staff engagement in East London today. So this became the most convenient time I could see you all before tomorrow. Understanding that even the Daily Maverick would prefer briefing on Thursday than on Friday. So that's why we are here. The boiler tube leaks detection, Jan, you want to take that, or back to you, Peggy?
Chair, I will take the boiler tube detections. The main way of detecting is the inspections that we do when we're doing boiler maintenance as well. Part of the boiler maintenance, we do what we call thickness surveys on the different parts of the tubes, because we know now the areas in terms of the boiler mapping, where highway areas, where because of the flow path of the air inside the boiler. So what we do, we use those measurements. If the measurements are below the required thickness as part of maintenance, we take them out. But we also use those ones to put it in our boiler healthcare program that give us an indications of the wear rate to tell us in the next outages where we're going to work to scope for the future outages. So we do that. But unfortunately, because of the size of the boiler, it's not possible that you will pick up every possible tube leaks that you will have there. When what we have done then as part of managing of the boiler as well, we've got what is called is the boiler leak detection system that is mapping the whole boiler. It sort of tells you early, because the sooner you can detect that there is a leak of the boiler, and the sooner you can shut down the plant, then the quicker you can return to service. So if the detection system that is inside the boiler measuring the sound of the leak, that's what we use that tell us there is a tube leaks in the boiler, then we can take it off. Because if we do not have that, then by the time you detect, because of the highest pressures that these boilers operate on, then the damage could be much severe if we do not have this detection. So it is detective in the slightest sound that is different from what we know from the boiler. That's why we have those detections. But mostly then it will require the outages to inspect, and then we use those inspections to determine the profile of the failure. When we know the boiler inspections, that every 12 months we need to do this boiler inspection as well to measure the thicknesses to prepare the scope for the major outages. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, yeah.
I would just like to add, excuse me, the question on have we placed a contract. We've made a decision that this service will be done by our subsidiary company, Rotec. So we are not going out on contract, so we're doing this service now ourselves.
Maybe let's try again, Bernard. I think it's an important thing, this of what is our installed base, what is available, what we will never get, so that we can perhaps finally settle this thing of 32,000. Where's the 15,000 between the 32 and the 47 installed?
Okay, I'll try again. Okay, so I think we already agreed that we'll start at 47. I hope we have calculators. So out of 47, if you take out to the 30 demand, you're left with 17,000. And this is exactly how we plan the system on a day-to-day basis. Then you have to add the real-time operating reserves, which is it's similar to a spare wheel. So that if I lose a unit at Medupi or Quebec, I have to have capacity available to immediately respond to keep the system in balance. So that now leaves us with 15,000. Let's take, for argument's sake, we've got 4,000 out for planned maintenance. Unfortunately, planned maintenance, you cannot bring the unit tomorrow. It takes days to close up the unit and bring it back. So then that leaves you with 11,000. So that is the avenue that you have for your breakdowns. So that's why we said at 9.5, you're still left with 1,500 to carry you for any other breakdowns that are above 9,500. But if you look at where we were over the weekend, we were at around 12,000, which is why we ended up in the situation we were. So I hope it's clear.
No, can you make it clearer?
Okay.
You are saying you have, for example, 4,000 out on planned maintenance. In addition to that, a further 11,000 power stations just break down. Is that what you are saying?
11,000 megawatts
Yes.
of breakdowns. That is correct.
Almost a third of all installed capacity.
That is correct. That's exactly what we presented.
Is that normal? A third of capacity just breaks down. I can accept that there will be 10% out on planned maintenance, as you've just explained. Is it normal to have 33% of your infrastructure just breaking down on a random day?
I will ask Becky maybe to explain.
Yeah, if I may, perhaps before Bernard continues, I think it's also just important in these numbers to appreciate that you have different technologies in the mix. You have baseload, coal, you have nuclear, you have pump storage, you have wind. So I think Bernard just needs to give that that clarity, so that whatever we have available, it's not that it's all baseload and always available. It's some of them have limited availability, which is part of what then in real time may deplete your actual availability. But I think, Bernard, perhaps you could just clarify that further. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so we've got different technologies. The base load is generally your coal, your nuclear, and your hydro, especially runoff river. The Mozambique scheme is the base load that we have. Internally in the country, you know, we don't have a lot of water. So that's why we only have what we call emergency reserves, which is your pump storage. Even our runover river is not available continuously. We are given limited hours on a daily basis by the Department of Water Affairs. In total, open cycle gas turbines, the diesel is about 3,500. That is a combination of Eskom's 2,500 and the IPP's 1,000 megawatts. And those again are not available all the time because of the cost, and I think that the chairman has already explained that. And then the second other technology which is limited is the pump storage. I tried to explain that as well, that we have to pump water up in order to have water available to generate. And the efficiency of this pump storage is about 75%. So it takes more energy to pump up than what you receive when you generate. So they have limited availability. So we're talking about 5,700 megawatts, which has limited availability. So it's not available all the time. But I think, Becky, if you want to elaborate on the question regarding the breakdowns.
Yeah, I think the breakdown as well, we need to separate because there's different categories as well of that. You will recall that we have units that has got a major incident, like for example, the Jabu Unit 5 and the Tuva unit as well, where we have major failures on those plants, which means that for a longer period, they are not available onto the system as well. And then you get then on top of that, the boiler tube leaks like they happen this weekend, where we will get like 6 units breaking down on a shorter space of time. That is almost, because most of them, that except for R0, which is about 350 megawatts, all the other ones are like 600 megawatts as well. If you take the 5 times 600 plus R0, you have about over 3,000 megawatts that came out as well at the same time, almost within the space of a weekend or 4 days. So coupled to that as well, we've got, although some of the units might be running as well, not off, but they will be not running at full capacity. Like you will recall that we, for example, if I take some of our new build, that you have a plant that can do 700 megawatts, but because of the design limitations that we currently busy with, especially on the back filters, those things we're running at about 500 megawatts. So it gives you a partial loss of, say, 200 per unit, and then the other one, so you find that we run sometimes on average about 3,500 again, although the unit is on load, but it's not on full power as well. So that is the combination to say it's not that the power that is, that 13 or 12,000 is completely, some of the units are running, but they are running at a reduced capacity. Like after the conveyor failure at Mitupi, we still maintain to run all 6 units, but then they were running almost at a reduced load, and we picked them up. When they were running at a reduced load, they add on that unavailability as well. Then it becomes even higher than during that period. It is not a normal situation to be running on that, but unfortunately that is the position that we're finding on as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the indulgence. I just thought it was important that we spend a little bit more time on this. Join me in learning to understand this, Konati. Money for spares and coal, no, that's none of the reasons that have led to this. We don't have that problem currently. I've told you why I'm at the airport. I'm not fetching the sea yet. Maybe to answer yours and Laurie's question at the same time. As we indicated when we presented our results end of July, that we will use the 3 months of my caretaking position to recruit, source, and then appoint, recommend the 3 names. We don't do the appointment. The minister has to appoint. As that we missed our deadline, we had meant to give the minister by the 30th of September. We did give the minister 7 days later the 3 names in order of preference of the candidates that out of the 6 that we had interviewed. And I can assure you that the 6 candidates we have interviewed were very good candidates. All 6 of them really were good enough. So we have 3 names that we have given to the minister, who will go through his processes, and the minister would make the appointment, and we still are on course. I spoke to the minister earlier today on this very point. Whilst at it, let me tell you, the minister is not missing in action. The minister is in Washington, D.C., arrived there this morning for IMF and World Bank meetings. You would be aware a lot of the funding that we get, both as Eskom and some of the SOEs, come from those funders. So the minister is in D.C., and we've been in touch with him continuously. So we should have the government announce the appointment of the new CEO of Eskom, hopefully before the end of the month. As you know, my day will come, Samgelo, that I will go and do the things I'm best qualified for. So that's that. Jan, do you want to deal, we've dealt with Sibu's question, do you want to deal with William's question on the silos, and also deal with the cost of diesel?
Thank you, Chair. Let's deal with the Kusile one. I can confirm that we don't have any problem. It must have been somebody that failed to open, WhatsApp messages for some months. So I can confirm that. Then in terms of diesel costs, the last load shedding before the day before yesterday was on the 23rd of March. So we went through 206 days, and during this period we have burned significantly less diesel what we forecasted. Obviously, the situation that we have now, we are burning more diesel, and we foresee that we will continue burning more diesel than the last few months. But I can confirm that we have burned significantly less than what we have forecasted.
Just in context, Laurie, if for the year ended March, I think we burnt about 6 billion rand worth of diesel. For year to date, if we have spent anything above 500 million, it would have been a lot. But this last 3 days, we would have spent more this financial year than we have cumulatively in the last 3 days. Because in dealing with this diesel, we also have to fill up the tanks, both tanks at Ankerlech and at Gorikwa. They are together just about 25 million liters. Therefore, one needs to also appreciate the point we're making, that to fill them up you need on and on going about 200 trucks of 15,000 liters or 30,000 liters each, with the logistics and the access and the traffic. So those are some of the challenges, assuming you have found the diesel. But to cost, we have spent much less than what we had spent for the 200 and for the many days we have had load shedding last year. Yes, Jan?
Just a little bit of information. It's always nice to know. If we start up one of these open cycle gas turbines and we put it to full load, push it to full load, we spend anything between 12 and 14 liters of diesel a second. So it is significantly, it's a significant expense that we have if we have to use this emergency at extended period. So I thought I'll just share that piece of statistic with yourselves.
Lastly, a related point, these have to be seen for what they were meant. They were meant to be emergency for peaking. They were never meant to be base. So we unfortunately find ourselves in this particular situation. You'd recall when we had our coal issues, we did in this. That's not a sustainable way. But thankfully, we're spending less and we are refilling the levels. William, you asked the question about short-term. Yeah, unfortunately, it's life, boy. If we had money, time, we would go and build 15 other new power stations, brand new. But that's unfortunately not how life is. We have power stations that we've built that we have to continue to get them tick along, waiting for the day when our mega projects finally come fully onto this. So it's a nice academic exercise to have, but we now have to continuously provide. And unfortunately, there are no storage technology, the scale of 47,000 megawatts. That we say demand today is this, you can put this in some battery, store it somewhere, tomorrow you can pull it out of that. It's unfortunately that technology has not yet reached that stage.
Sorry, Chair, maybe I didn't hear, but I did ask earlier on one of my first questions that the Deputy President in the House today had said, yes. So you do remember the question? Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Mr. Mabuza, how complex is the problem with the conveyor belt at Medupi? To me, it sounds like a fairly simple thing to fix, but it's taking 10 days. Maybe you can help us to understand that, please.
Mr. Mabuza, Samkelo here again. Just to check, if Eskom didn't notify the President on the issue of load shedding, was the Minister of Public Enterprises engaged on this particular matter? Since he's away, I would assume there's someone you are engaging with from the government side. Are you talking to the President directly about this? Because he was just in the United Kingdom recently, and he did speak about Eskom. And his biggest worry is this power utility, which he has said has the capability of plunging this country into an economic crisis. How far are you in engagements with him on this regard? Thank you.
There's still time after the briefing if you have more questions.
No, there isn't.
How far is the break-up of Eskom into 3 entities, please? Thank you.
That's one question, actually. I just wanted to know, have you guys appointed financial advisors on the breakup and on the debt restructuring? And if so, who did you decide on? Thank you very much.
Bonga, if I recall, your question was the Deputy President did say that we should drive the cost of electricity lower, and we on the other side are ever asking for more and more increases on tariffs. It definitely is part of our mandate is to provide reliable electricity at the least cost. That is our mandate. That is what we strive for. But over time, structurally, we have taken decisions as Eskom that have taken us away from some of the fundamental drivers of costs. Part of the original models, which did lead to a time when Eskom was one of the cheapest, South Africa had the cheapest power in global terms, was because the entire model of building power station on top of coal fields use conveyor belt to take the coal out of the ground and put it into the bunkers, burn that coal, and then transport electricity via the transmission lines. Over time, we've taken decisions as Eskom. Those decisions were like, we will not spend more money in maintaining our cost-plus mines. 2, we would therefore still need coal, but we'll then have to go and find coal from the furthest point away from the power station, which also has had its impact on the quality and the quantity and the cost of bringing that coal. So where we are at now, we are paying to transport coal and then transport electricity through our transmission. We will also be aware that that has also led us to all sorts of other challenges that we spoke about when we were talking about our coal supply situation. In trying to deal with our stock levels over the last 6 months, we have had to enter into short and immediate term contracts to feed to reach the code grids of our stock levels. This has given us time. You would have also heard us say we need to go back to longer term contracting on coal, try and get those to as close to the life of power station as is possible. We have also embarked on recommitting that our first mode of transporting coal would be conveyor belt, the next would be rail, and only when we cannot use road. So we're on course. We're back to trying to do that. We are not trying to go to NESA and want to find more and more and more money. All what we're asking of NESA is for us to get the tariff that is cost reflective, as per the MYPT and the NESA pricing methodology that we are committed to. It is against this background that when we're not getting that, we're taking NESA to court once we've gotten their reasons, to explain to us and get their decision to be reviewed. Miss Slabbit. Peggy will explain this, but as I understand this, this conveyor belt, the length is about 7 kilometers. It apparently has snapped at the tail end of the conveyor belt. When the conveyor belt, if you just think about it, it's a belt like this. When it snapped, it twisted. And when it's twisted, it stopped. The mechanism to move stopped. The weight of the coal that was on the belt at that time became that much intense because it was not moving weight. It was weight static. It collapsed the structure that is holding the conveyor belt. So remember, the conveyor belt is on a built structure, is on a covered structure. So when it stops, you have to open the structure, the covered structure, to get to the belt and see what has been torn, remove the coal that is already on the belt to get to actually the structure. Some of this structure has been purpose-built for this particular conveyor belt. So it is that it has taken this long. Where we are today, at first look, it was like it was going to take maybe more than 10 days to get it fixed. Where we are today, I'm pleased the progress that has been done in rebuilding the structure. They've already started to lay this. They are putting some drills to get it back onto the belt. I have been reliably told Peggy went to Midupi yesterday. We've got all the humans we can get there, all the intellect we can get there, all the expertise we can get there. We should be able to get this conveyor belt at by Wednesday, the 23rd or 24th, back in progress. In the meantime, what then means? You have to truck coal for the 7 kilometers around, dump it in front of the bunker, and then move it into the bunker and then push it up. Because this conveyor belt, when they get up, they go higher up into the boilers. So they have got what they call their buffalo that are now pushing this coal, and they've got stackers that then take the coal up. So that is that manual feeding that we are doing to the boilers currently. So it was quite a long and a big rubber stuff that is torn. That's why it's taken this long. Peggy, you can correct this taxi driver.
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe what is important to start to explain as well, this is one of our biggest belt in terms of the width as well. At full capacity, it will carry like 4,000 tons per hour to bring it into the station. So you could imagine if it failed with that load as well, because what happened also, you will have the failure is on the tail end, on the drive end side. We've got these big motors to pull all this coal as well. So what happened then, when this failure started to happen, as it also torn the belt for about 700 meters as well of that belt. During that process as well, the chute, we lost what we call the tail end pulley of this belt, which it then moved, and then what also damaged the structure because of the force of pulling it. It sort of came out from its end cap bolts of this tail end pulley and hit the structure where, because it was on the transfer point where the mine should end, and then where the belt takes, it was on that transfer point. And so we need then to rebuild some of the structure that was damaged by this pulley because it hit and damaged, and then also the bolt on the cement where the pulley sits as well. We needed to redo all of that and the cement. So that is the major work that is there. And also when this belt failed, it failed with coal into it. And then because of the size, the width is almost 2 meters, and then it's full of coal, so you need to offload it because it creates a slack now when it fails, so you can't rejoin it. And because of the size of it, it's covered with corrugated iron as well, which is about maybe so much from the belt, about let's say 1 meter. So you can't work as well under that position to offload it. So we have finished now to cut off the belt that has failed, clean the area, also remove the failed tail end pulley, and then we are starting now to rebuild, and then we also started to rejoin the belt. We needed about 3 lengths of 300-meter belts to splice it and to pull it as well, which is quite a tricky work given the height that you need to work. And also when you now need to strengthen it because of the length of it, you will need to also to go to the mine servitude with a bigger like bulldozer to try and pull it to strengthen up there. So that's a whole work that needs a lot of proper supervision as well to not to cause the damage alter to the other structures as well. Especially when you're working at night, it becomes even more unsafe. So you need a lot of supervision as well, and the engineers. That's what is taking sometime, then we can do the splicing. So, but the team is working very hard. We are constant contact with them. I was with the team yesterday. We are confident that the progress we are making now after the belt has been offloaded to replace it, we are in progress to come back as the chair has said. Thank you, Chair.
Skonati, it is a matter of days now. We will hear of the Eskom special paper that is going to go into more details on the process and the next steps on the separation. So let's wait for that. But directionally, we still are of the view that our current vertically integrated utility structure is no longer appropriate for a utility of this time, and also ever so mindful about the concentration risk that we have of this vertically integrated utility. Loni, you would be aware that there is the Chief Restructuring Officer who's been hard at work, the CRO on the debt side, and National Treasury has also appointed some advisors to work with it, and all this will come out in the special paper and or in the midterm budget policy statement by the minister end of the month. And what is not covered in there will certainly come out on the IRP when the final IRP. Samgelo, you and I have got yes and no questions. The first one is yes. The second one is yes. I hope you remember your questions. My answer to both is yes, yes. We have been engaged with the minister. We've been talking to the minister. We have been working with the minister till late hours of Monday, till late hours of Tuesday. Been talking to the minister up until as he was going to cabinet on Wednesday morning. We've been talking to the minister up until the time he caught his flight to Washington last night. Spoke to him as soon as he landed. Did talk to the president this morning and did talk to the deputy president this morning. Thank you very much, Dikatso, and thank you guys, and thanks for coming up, and once more, apologies. We'll try and...
It's the Eskom press conference live from OR Tambo International Airport. Members of the Eskom board and the technical team, chaired, of course, there by the chair of the Eskom board, is also the acting CEO at the moment. That makes him the executive chair, Jabu Mabuza, also Jan Oberholzer, the chief operating officer at Eskom. One of the big headlines coming out of that, of course, many questions and conversations coming through there, but one of the big headlines, it seems instead of stage 2 load shedding until Wednesday, as we were told yesterday, it now looks like we might have stage 1 load shedding from 9 o'clock tomorrow, and after tomorrow, no more load shedding is forecast. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Now, we are going to have to wait and see. Of course, Mr. Jabu also just taking us through, of course, what essentially Eskom's contingency plans are, and somewhat having to explain itself. But before we wrap up the full view this evening, let's have a look at your top story this evening. Of course, the High Court in